Have you ever had this experience? You tell someone something you really care about, something that excites you, moves you, or even troubles you, and they ignore you. Or worse, they cut you off and move on to another topic. They may not mean it, but it still makes you feel left out, unheard, unappreciated. If you've ever been in this situation, you're not alone. I've been there, and I know how painful it can be. Not being listened to isn't just a conversation that didn't go well. It's an emotional wound. It creeps in, making you doubt your own worth. It may only happen once, then twice. But when it happens repeatedly, you start to ask yourself, am I not important? Am I not worth caring about? Unfortunately, this is a common experience in modern life. Between the rapid-fire texting, rushed conversations, and short attention spans that social media provides, the ability to listen seems to be on the wane. But that doesn't mean your need to be heard isn't legitimate. On the contrary, it's a core part of the human psyche. Feeling ignored isn't just a passing annoyance. It can leave lasting emotional scars. According to neurological studies, when people are rejected or ignored, the part of the brain that processes physical pain is also activated. In other words, being ignored can feel like a real hurt, like an invisible stab to your self-esteem. The desire to be heard stems from a deep human need to be connected, to be recognized, and to feel valued. It's not just a desire to talk. It's part of our survival instinct. We're social creatures. And the recognition of others is the foundation for feeling safe and belonging. However, we often underestimate the impact of not being heard. Many people think it's a small thing, that we should learn to let it go. But ignoring it means ignoring the most basic emotional need. And when it happens repeatedly, it not only makes you feel lonely, but can also erode your confidence and trust in relationships. I used to ask myself, what am I doing wrong? Why aren't they interested in what I have to share? And then I realized that it's not always your fault. Sometimes the person you're talking to doesn't have the skills to listen. Sometimes they're just busy with their own internal battles. And sometimes society fails to teach us how to appreciate the presence and stories of others. In this long article, A Journey of Experience and Discovery Together, I will not only help you understand why feeling unheard can be so deeply hurtful, but also share specific ways you can be heard more, connect more deeply with others, and most importantly, feel more valued in your own life. This journey is not about blame. It is about enlightenment. It is not about resentment. It is about healing. So let's begin. I used to think that not being heard was just a trivial moment, like someone accidentally interrupting me at dinner, or someone nodding in agreement when I shared something important. But then, I realized it was not that simple. It was not just a momentary action, it was a message, silent but powerful, that you're not worth my attention. And that, over time, it began to change me. I began to be more reserved when I was about to speak. In conversations, I carefully considered what I was going to say for fear of being ignored again. I censored myself. Gradually, I spoke less, shared less, not because I had nothing to say, but because I no longer believed that anyone would actually listen. You can see yourself in that. Maybe you felt like a radio with the volume turned down low, talking and no one paying attention. And that makes you start to doubt, not just others, but your own worth. The scariest thing is when we're not listened to. We not only lose connection with others, but also gradually lose connection with ourselves. In psychology, there's a concept called authenticity, the ability to be your true self, to express your thoughts, feelings, and values honestly. But to do that, we need a safe space, a place where we are heard, where we are responded to honestly. Without that space, authenticity erodes. We begin to live the way we think others want us to live. We become disguised. We act. We put on a front, and then we get tired. One of the most painful things about not being heard is that it stops us from talking about the things that really matter to us. We hide our deepest thoughts, our dreams, our unspoken sorrows, and when we hide them for too long, we start to forget how we ever felt. I want to share with you an important discovery according to psychologist Alfred Adler, a name that is less mentioned than Freud or Jung, but has extremely humanistic views. He believed that all human behavior comes from a sense of belonging. When we do not feel connected to others, we do not feel useful, valuable in their eyes, We will experience a feeling of insecurity, even emptiness. And one of the most obvious ways that we feel unbelonging is when we are not listened to. Unfortunately, and when no one listens to us, we sometimes unconsciously do the opposite. Stop listening to others. We close ourselves off. We build walls to protect ourselves. And then those walls prevent others from reaching us. A closed loop, an isolated world where we both long to be heard and fear that the silence will continue to repeat itself. But not everyone is indifferent. Sometimes people don't listen because they don't know how. Sometimes they're tired. They're worried. They're carrying their own pain that no one else is listening to. They're not intentionally ignoring you. They're just struggling to listen to themselves. Knowing that doesn't take away the pain, but it does make it easier. When we understand that other people's indifference isn't always a personal rejection, we can take a step back, not to give up, but to understand better. Next up, we'll delve into something very specific, something I've been guilty of myself, how we can, even unintentionally, make others not want to listen to us, and how to change that without losing who we are. Are you ready? I used to think that not being listened to was just a minor annoyance, a passing annoyance that would pass. But the more I live, the more I realize it's not a minor thing. Because when we speak and no one pays attention, when we share something sincere but only receive a blank stare or a hasty change of subject, we don't just feel lost, we feel like we've disappeared. We're here, we want to connect, but no one is really there for us in that moment. Gradually, we begin to wonder, does what I say matter? Are my feelings worth others' attention? And from these questions, something scary begins to happen. We withdraw. We become more cautious about sharing. We become less talkative. Not because we have nothing to say, but because we no longer believe that anyone really wants to listen. Not being heard, repeated over time, is like a smoldering smoke that creeps into our self-esteem. It makes us doubt ourselves, makes us start wearing masks to hide our true feelings, for fear that if we reveal too much, we will be abandoned again. I remember sharing a deep sadness with a close friend. I expected a nod, a sympathetic look, a simple, "I understand." But all I got was a hasty, "Yeah, but stop thinking about it. Be optimistic." It sounded positive, but to me at the time, it felt like an interruption. I didn't need someone to fix my feelings. I just needed someone to be there, to really listen. Not being listened to makes us feel lost even in the closest relationships. And more painfully, when we go unheard for too long, we start to stop talking about the things that matter most to us, our dreams, our hurts, our deepest desires. And when we stop sharing those things, we start to lose touch with ourselves. But what I want you to know is this feeling is completely reasonable. It doesn't make you weak. On the contrary, it shows that you still yearn for connection, that your heart is still alive, still wanting to be seen, understood, and appreciated. That's a good sign, because it's only when we feel hurt that we know we need to heal. It bears repeating feeling hurt is not just a pleasant thing. It is a basic psychological need. It gives us a sense that we have a place in the world, that our presence matters. And when someone really listens to us with their heart, not just their ears, it feels like a silent, powerful hug. It soothes, it revives, it gives us the courage to keep being true to ourselves. And when no one listens, it affects us more than we realize. It doesn't just make us sad, it changes us. And sometimes, what we lose is not our voice. It's the belief that our voice ever mattered. Not being heard over and over again not only hurts us, but it also makes us stop sharing. We start to stay silent not because we have nothing to say, but because we no longer believe that anyone really wants to hear what we have to say. And from there, we drift away from others and more painfully, drift away from ourselves. But I want you to remember your feelings are real. That sadness, that loss, have every reason to exist. You are not weak because you feel hurt. On the contrary, it is because you have a heart that can vibrate, that knows how to wait for a sincere connection, that you feel hurt when you are not listened to. That is a sign that you are still alive, still have hope, still looking for a real connection. And because of that, what that hope is always worth keeping. Even if you have been ignored, have felt like your voice was just echoing in the void, I want you to believe that what you share is important. Your story is unique, and you deserve to be heard, to be understood, to be seen for who you really are. In the next section, we'll take a deeper look at why so many people don't really listen. Not to blame them, but to understand what's blocking genuine connection. From there, you'll learn how to create a space where others want to listen to you. Not because you're shouting louder, but because your genuine presence makes them want to stop and listen. Because healing doesn't come from talking more, it comes from being truly heard,